Today we're driving the new 2022 Honda Civic Si Sedan, a hugely anticipated car for this next year. Guys, I'm excited for this one. We've got some fantastic drive roads today. We're on Mulholland Highway in California. Let's talk some specs. We'll take it for a drive. 11th generation. We have 200 horsepower from a 1.5 liter turbocharged VTEC engine, a 6-speed manual transmission. It has a helical front limited slip differential. And we also get the rev match system from the Civic Type R, which is very nice. We also have some suspension bushings taken from the Type R. We have a McPherson strut front suspension, multi-link rear suspension, and of course this is the Civic Sedan, so a slightly longer body than the hatch. Let's walk you around this thing, show you what it looks like inside and out. We'll take it for a drive and hopefully give you a taste of this new Civic Si. The car we're driving today is painted in blazing orange pearl. It is a fantastic color, photographs really well, looks great in the sunlight. I'm not too sure about how well it matches the red seats on the inside. You can kind of see red and orange. Not the best color combo, but luckily there's some other great colors on the Civic if that doesn't strike your fancy. Looks pretty good though on these black 18-inch alloy wheels. Today we are on the Performance Summer tires. These are Eagle F1 tires. This is the only option for the Civic Si, extra 200 bucks. This thing starts at $27,300, which I think in this current market is fantastic value for a pretty practical proposition for the enthusiast. This car kind of does it all. It's got tons of interior space, it's livable, it's got great features, and it is quite fun to drive. I've already spent some time behind the wheel, and I'm excited to show you guys what that's like. Let's show you just the trunk here real quick, give you a little refresher on rear space. Pretty large opening, 60/40 folding rear seats. No spare tire, unfortunately, though you do get a little space to put stuff back here. And we've been driving on these canyon roads so much today, I've just kind of shoehorned my backpack in the back. In the back seats, tons of legroom. Pretty comfortable back here too. It is definitely a bit more Spartan in here compared to the Civic Touring, but that's okay. This is a more performance-oriented Civic Sedan. This 1.5 VTEC turbo is rated for 27 miles to the gallon in the city, 37 mpg on the highway, 200 horsepower and 192 pound-feet of torque. Super efficient, very smooth, great little engine. And with the new active sound control, it actually sounds quite a bit better than the previous generation Civic Si. Finally makes a nice noise. I think Honda has made some really nice decisions here with how they've spec'd out this new Civic Si. We have a pretty minimal interior, definitely not as many features or luxuries as the Civic Touring has. We don't have a heated steering wheel or heated seats, for example. No more adaptive suspension in this 11th generation Si. Honestly, I'm not really going to miss too many of those features. I really like that they kept the Bose sound system. We have wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, selectable drive modes, and a new individual mode where you can configure steering feel and engine response, which is nice. Very cool to see Honda finally doing that. This is just a fun, focused driver's car that I think fits a lot of people's needs who are maybe younger demographic, younger buyers. They just want a car that they can have fun with. So speaking of which, let's head out onto the road and see what this thing is like. We'll start off in sport mode. I love the sound these drive modes make. Almost reminds me of Gran Turismo. As soon as we let out the clutch, handbrake will automatically disengage. So I think the number one question in everyone's minds, or at least a lot of people who watch the channel, is the rev hang gone? Well, the answer is no. It's still there. It has been reduced. We do have a slightly lighter flywheel in this new Civic Si, and that has helped engine response considerably. You can hear that active sound management. It's definitely a big improvement over the 10th Gen Si. The chassis control and the handling from this new car is just incredible. Very little understeer. The front diff does an amazing job pulling you out of the corners. Brake feel is excellent, nice firm pedal. Excellent bite, very progressive and linear and easy to modulate. I love the steering feel too, even in sport with it weighted up. It feels really nice. There's a refinement to this new Civic Si that is very satisfying to drive. Tons of grip, tons of traction. The shifter feel is still fantastic. Honda always nails it in their Civic Si's and Type R's. Such a beautiful, short, mechanical throw. The active sound control is still a little bit artificial sounding between gear shifts. This car is quick. You need to rev it out a little bit more to get the power out of it. But it's a nice linear power band that builds progressively and pulls pretty strong until red line. Clutch pedal's light, pretty easy to modulate. Active rev matching seems to be very similar to how the Type R performed. It's kind of a 95% system in that it works great 95% of the time, but every now and then you can catch it out and you'll miss a rev match here and there. But for the most part, it's a really good system. It's nice to have that assistance if you want it, and you can just go in the menu and turn it off. It does take quite a few selections, but I think you're either a rev match person or you aren't. And if you're in the mood for it, you can just kind of leave it enabled or disabled for whatever mood that you're in. Guys, this is a really enjoyable car to drive. I think the biggest leap from the previous generation is just the overall refinement of this new Civic. The engine sounds good. It's kind of throaty and guttural at the low revs. And then once you get up into the higher registers, higher RPMs, it sounds like it has VTEC again, which is great. It's not just another whooshy 2-liter turbo. Appreciate this road for a minute. Absolutely incredible. Wow. You get a just small hint of turbo whistle when letting off the gas. And don't get me wrong, there's still a decent amount of torque down low. It's just the way that the power builds in this 1.5 liter turbo makes you want to rev it out. Which actually I think makes it a little more fun. Nice sounding rev limiter too. Super direct steering, a pretty good amount of communication too. Again, the front end on this car is just so taut, so stiff, really well planted, really well tuned. I was driving this earlier in the city, and I think the ride is a bit firm at low speeds, but once you kind of get rolling, get going, get some speed, under the suspension, under the tires. It smooths out quite a bit. It's a nice balance between, I think, normal and stiff on the previous generation Civic Si. And you can see there, revs drop pretty immediately. There's no rev hang. Rev hang hasn't been eliminated. It's definitely still there, but it's not a constant annoyance like it used to be in the previous generation car. Of course, you can always get this stuff tuned out if you choose, but from the factory, I think we're in a pretty good place with this new SI. Honda definitely listened to its customers, and the lightweight flywheel gives this car really nice response. Let's do a quick 0 to 60 while we're here. Partially downhill, partially uphill. Super easy to turn off traction control too. Just a one button press. You don't have to hold it, you don't have to double press it. Just simple, and I love that. And even with traction control off, we still have amazing grip. We don't have any weird torque vectoring stuff going on. This is such a better setup than the torque vectoring or brake torque vectoring open differentials that we see in a lot of other performance cars, and that we've seen a lot of other performance cars throughout the years. I really got to give Honda credit for sticking with a limited slip, a mechanical limited slip diff all these years in the Civic Si. I think it makes a really big difference and just adds to the driving enjoyment. The 6,500 RPM redline comes on a little bit early. I always kind of feel like I want just a few more 100 RPM out of this engine, but you do get used to it. You can adapt. Just a great chassis to rip through the canyons. I'm very pleasantly surprised at how much fun I'm having in this today. I think besides the 8th gen SI, this is the best SI they've made in a long time. Power level feels great. The chassis tuning is just sublime. Oh, what a road. Honda's really been making some big leaps in the evolution of their vehicles lately, and this new Civic is one of them. This is just such a better dialed in car than the previous generation was. I always felt like the 10th gen was unfinished. It felt like it could use just a bit more tuning and calibration to improve everything. And this feels properly set up and properly calibrated. guys, looking at this view, this is insane. Insane. Yeah, just a really nice blend of performance, practicality, driving enjoyment. There's some real advantages and real highlights to this new Civic sedan just in general in its nature. Whether you get the CVT Touring or the Sport or this SI. Cool. Well, we've got some normal roads to drive on here, so let's hit it. And if you're going to make a car with a manual transmission, at least make it a good manual transmission. This shifter is just phenomenal. It's a car that encourages you to drive it hard, drive it a little bit faster. There's not so much power here that you can't enjoy it on the street, and I feel like you're always going to be getting into trouble. You can rev this thing out. And it's a very natural, enjoyable driving experience. I love the throttle response. I think that's really the biggest win from this lighter flywheel is that response on downshifts when you blip it, when you rev it. Yes, you can use the rev match system, but honestly, your right foot does it a little bit quicker sometimes. So I think it's time for a little bit of a change of pace. We've mostly been driving the Civic Si today on canyon roads in a spirited fashion. Let's tone things down a little bit and see how this feels in a more normal daily driving environment. We're on the Pacific Coast Highway, just leaving Matador Beach. Let's see how it goes through the gears on light throttle applications. I really do think there's a pretty big improvement here with the way this drives. It feels a little bit more Civic Type R, like with the relationship between the clutch pedal, the shifter, the way the revs drop. We still have quite a bit of tire and road noise. Probably something you could improve on your own with a different set of tires. I know the Civic hatch, the Sport, was on, I think, Bridgestones instead of Goodyears, and that reduced road noise quite a bit from the sedan. Let's try out adaptive cruise. Press our switch here. This should be pretty much the same system that we have in the Civic sedan, but with a manual. We have adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, a very simple and intuitive setup here with this button layout. See how lane keep works. Pretty clearly defined lines here. A little bit of a corner. Seem to be negotiating everything pretty well. I also appreciate the simplicity of this car. I think having adaptive suspension maybe gives you a few too many options with your driving modes. I always have preferred just a nicely set up suspension and a well-tuned chassis over maybe a chassis with some compromises in different drive modes. It simplifies the driving experience, it simplifies the ownership, maintenance and cost experience later down the road when you have to replace those components. And if you want to modify the suspension, put on, instead of lowering springs or coilovers or change out the dampers, you don't have to override the electronic controls. So in that respect, it's a little bit more tuner friendly, which is definitely where the Civic Si sits. If I had one complaint, it would be that it's a little bit tough to see out of the rear window sometimes in this sedan. The rear part of the trunk kind of tilts up a little bit, especially with that bubble from the third brake light, and it can be a little bit difficult to see cars directly behind you. Tire noise definitely depends on what type of pavement you're driving on. All right, we're back at it, into the canyons. I can't stress enough, this is such a better Civic Si. It's so well-rounded. Beyond just the practical aspects from this new Civic sedan, it's fun to drive. It's really well tuned and calibrated. The controls here just feel right. I'm genuinely impressed, and to be honest, I've never been a really big fan of the Civic Si, at least since the 8th gen Si was out. There's enough adjustability here with the settings to kind of tailor the experience to however you want it to be, whether you want heavy steering or a responsive engine or rev matching or to do the heel-toe downshifts on your own. It's nice to have that choice, and it's great to see that Honda is baking that in to their software now. Granted, it is still about 7 inputs to get to the rev matching menu, so you're either going to kind of commit to that on a drive or not. But that's okay. And this 1.5 turbo has some character to it. Granted, some of that character is piped in engine sound, and it sounds a little bit artificial, but it's just convincing enough, I think, to do the trick. It's more convincing than the last gen. I think it's better than it's a better execution than the BRZ and GR86s. What a road. Mind the gravel. So much confidence behind the wheel of this car. It's point, aim, shoot. This would be a great autocross car, maybe a nice little light track day car. If you're just getting into performance driving, or you want a daily that you can take out to the canyons on the weekends, this is a really, really nice option. For me, it would kind of be between this or the BRZ or GR86, honestly. In the current landscape of things, this is just such a well-rounded package. kind of depends on what you need and what you're looking for in a car. There's also the Veloster N and the Elantra N. Those are going to be a little bit more brutal driving experiences. You can just get on the throttle so early. Very impressed with these brakes too. We had a little bit of fade coming down the hill earlier, but for the most part, they have maintained and held really well all day driving hard in these canyons. Initial bite is nice. They grab really well progressively. We've already talked about pedal feel being really nice and firm. I like the Honda gives you a boost gauge too, that's cool. There are a bunch of different gauges and menus. On this left-hand digital display, you can get a turbo gauge, see your navigation, driver attention, throttle, brake, a G meter. Let's try that out, that might be fun. Not that I'm going to be looking at it around these corners. ABS seems to be tuned pretty well too. It's not super intrusive. It gives you a little bit of leeway to stand on the brakes without everything going and becoming a mess if a wheel lifts off the ground. And we've definitely been cocking a wheel or two around some of these corners today. Even with stability control on too, it's not an invasive system, allowing just enough slip from those front tires to let you have some fun. And honestly, with traction control off, this SI still puts its power down so well. And I like that this still has relatively short gearing. We're not chasing 0 to 60 times in this SI. We're chasing an experience and a feel behind the wheel. Gosh, these roads are just unbelievable. I want to throw it into individual mode. We'll lighten up the steering a little bit. We even have a little ridge right here under the screen to rest our fingers so we can kind of stabilize our hand and more accurately touch what we want to on the screen. Just little things like that add up and show how thoughtful Honda was in designing the user interface in this interior. I'm a really big fan of this interior space. I think it is just so nice to see a functional driver's car, especially with what Volkswagen did to the new GTI. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting over that. It's just such a frustrating experience behind the wheel, and the Civic Si is complete polar opposite. So let's pull over here, turn off rev match downshifting. We've got to have our handbrake on. Go into vehicle settings, driving assist setup. At the very bottom is the rev match system. We'll turn that off and see how it feels just au natural. Pedals are actually really nicely placed for heel toe downshifts. And with the responsiveness from this engine, it's a pretty nice experience rev matching and blipping the throttle yourself in the Civic Si. It kind of goes against the general trend that a lot of enthusiast cars have been going towards in the recent years. It's adding engagement, it's adding feel in comparison to its predecessors, and I really appreciate that about this new Si. This is a more fun, more engaging car to drive, but it's also nicer to live with. You get a pretty good idea of how much throttle you need to consistently rev match in this Si. And when you're into the brakes, you don't have to get super hard into the pedal to be positioned well for a heel toe downshift. Well, cool guys, that was a fun day. I have always wanted to drive around the canyons around here in Mulholland and in Malibu. This was just a treat today. What a wonderful, wonderful experience, and a great car to do it in. This new Si is a really impressive package. I love what Honda's done here with this new car. They have created a nice, fun to drive, refined package that I think really delivers on its promises as being an everyday enthusiast bargain. Yeah, there's really not much more I can say about it. High praises, high compliments. I think Honda is absolutely nailing it with this new Civic in any of its forms. Kind of just pick your flavor at this point. Really, all we have left to wait for is the Type R, and again, I'm sure that's just going to be a phenomenal car too. But as it sits right now, this Civic Si, super recommendable. I've really enjoyed my time in it today. It is a genuinely good enthusiast offering. Would I pick it over a BRZ? I don't know. As a daily driver, as a do-it-all car, it's really, really nice. You kind of have to get behind the wheel of one of these, drive it for yourself, see how you like it, see how it feels. But Honda's done a really pretty bang-up job with this new Si. I am very, very pleasantly surprised and impressed with the way this thing drives, looks, feels. The whole package is very well done. So anyway, on that note, I think we're going to wrap up the video. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Stay tuned on the Windy Road Magazine YouTube channel. We'll also be posting some videos there with just pure driving, no talking. So if you want to hear the Si hammer through some canyon roads in the mountains, that'll be your place to do that. Until then, though, hopefully you got a pretty good idea of what this thing is like to live with and drive. We'll see you guys in the next video. Looking forward to spending some more time in one of these later this year or early next year. Back home on some familiar roads. Still, though, what a great experience today it was flogging this around in the canyons. All right, that'll be it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.